Hi guys, I hope everyone is well. Welcome to another lesson, and today we're going to talk about the breaker block and what it entails and how we can take advantage of breaker blocks when we see them. So what is a breaker block? A breaker block is an area that is referred to in price manipulation. So if you see price pushing in a certain way, you may be able to identify a breaker block there. It is an area that the algorithm will refer towards. This will allow interbank level traders to mitigate long or short positions. Buy and sell orders are placed at these levels. So I'm going to take you to the charts and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by drawing you out a little diagram. Okay, so we are in the charts now, and I'm just going to draw out what a bearish breaker block would be like. So let's just imagine price is pushing to the upside, and then we get the famous break to the downside. Now, what you end up seeing in this particular environment, as usual, okay, we always like to see liquidity being grabbed. We like to see a high, a low, a new high, and then a nice break to the downside below market level right here. Now, we've spoken before about our model getting in on this area here to come back down again. So what we want to be looking at now is where a bearish breaker block would be involved. Now, what you end up getting is a candle, usually around here. So the last down candle before price moves higher and then gets disrespected. So this area here, this candle is your breaker area. And what you end up getting is price mitigating into that area and then dropping lower again. So this is essentially what we're looking to do. So we can see a high, we can see a low, we can see liquidity has been taken right here. Okay. So, and then after we see that, we can see a break in market structure. And then this breaker area here is valid for us to take. So this is a very valid entry area. I'm going to go over what makes this more of a specific entry in a minute. But in the meantime, let me just draw you out here a bullish example. So a bullish breaker block. And essentially it's this, but we're looking to go in the opposite direction. So we can see that price is obviously pushing lower in here, and then we can see price is now broken to the upside again, breaking market structure. We are looking to identify the last up candle before price moved down in this block here, and then we can see price breaking structure, and we're looking to get in on the retest of this breaker block here. So essentially we're looking for a few different things. Okay, we're looking for swing high or low, and then we're looking for liquidity to be taken, and then we're looking for a break in market structure, and that's after a higher high or lower low is formed. I should probably put that in first, so that might not make a lot of sense, but essentially look, we can see a high, we can see a low, we can see price coming down, we can see a new high after taking liquidity, then we can see a break of structure to the downside, price comes back into the breaker block and then mitigates into it. Vice versa here on a bullish breaker block, we can see in a bearish condition we've broken market structure, we created this low, we created a high, a new low has been created after taking out liquidity, breaking market structure. This breaker block is now valid. Now, in terms of actually getting in on these areas here, there's a couple of entries you can be looking at. The first thing I would be looking to do, because price is an equilibrium, so essentially what we want to be trying to do is get in on 50% of that candle. So 50% of that is a pretty good area to get yourself involved in. And again, 50% of that candle there is quite relevant. But for me, I don't look for just the breaker blocks alone. I use breaker blocks as solely confirmation for a trade idea. I like the same stuff. So where we've spoken about the perfect buy and sell model before, imagine this breaker block didn't exist in previous videos. We've actually got our liquidity take, we've got our breaker structure, we've got our order blocks, we've got the move up that caused the move down. Obviously now we know there's a breaker block here. What I am looking for, and this is the same thing as always, is imbalance. Now imbalance for me is the entry. Now when I see a breaker block inside the imbalance, that gives me that extra confirmation that this is going to be an area that should play out, and this is an area that should end up playing out. And then what you end up seeing is a good indication of whether your trade is going to hit the roof running or not, is if candles actually represent these areas here. If they respect these areas here, I do apologize. So if they respect these areas here and they don't violate by closing above, then the chances are you're gonna get a good area of support, resistance, whatever from these areas here. And actually what you'll find is that price will actually consolidate in these areas and then take it to the downside when it's actually ready to. So when I see I'm in drawdown off this entry here, but the candles are constantly respecting the breaker block area, I've always got a little bit more confidence because I'm fully aware that these areas are going to be playing out. So, you know, we can always look for examples. So your homework for today would be just to kind of search for examples, to be honest, because they're everywhere. I mean, you can see one right here. We can see push to the upside, break here. There's obviously a nice area there. Let's see if we can find a good one. Let's go to sessions and see if we can find one. So just as an example, what we've actually got here is price moving to the upside, price aggressively dropping to the downside, breaking this structure here after taking out this liquidity right here. Now you can see here we've actually got this breaker block. I'm on a 2-minute chart at the moment. Inside the breaker block we have got imbalance, and as you can see price tapped into that imbalance very, very slightly and then ended up selling off very aggressively, but it used this block here. And you can even see price, which created the imbalance, came up to this area here, came into this candle and ended up respecting the breaker block. So it's another good indication that if price is creating imbalance within this breaker block here, you get a pretty good idea that price wants to carry on moving lower. You can go down to a smaller time frame just to have a look. You can see the breaker block in a 1-minute format. You can see a better idea of the imbalance that was created. So you can kind of use 2 time frames to kill 2 birds with 1 stone there. I always recommend traveling between time frames. And again, you can see here these levels are completely respected inside the overall breaker block. So that there in itself would have been a pretty good entry. So guys, homework for today is, again, go over breaker blocks, look at the charts, find breaker blocks, make sure they meet the criteria. Okay, so you want the higher high, you want the breaker structure, you want to see that last candle there. Okay, so this would be a bearish example. Okay, so see what you can find. I don't if you've only just found out what breaker blocks are for the first time today, I don't expect this to be something that you find straight away, but what we're doing, we're building up more foundations to go into more detail. So when I talk about price action and talk about trades playing out and things like that, and I talk about breaker blocks, you're going to start seeing them, you're going to start noticing them. So it's going to give you a much better idea of what they are with experience. But overall, this is your introduction to breaker blocks. So I hope you enjoyed it, guys, and if you need anything, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you on the next one.